Hi, I'm Mike Handverker with TrickyFast Studios. Today I'm going to show you all about the camera and player controllers in Cat Game Builder. By the end of this video, you should be able to set up a player controller, add inputs, set up a camera controller, and add inputs to that so that you can make first-person or third-person games easily. So we're going to start with this empty scene here. It's got some geometry. It does have a camera, but it's just the default camera from Unity. It has a player object that's just a capsule, and we're going to give this, and that's where we're going to start with the player. So the first thing we want to add is a state machine, and then we're going to add a. So there's two different ways to build character controllers in Cat Game Builder. You can use the built-in Unity character controller, or you can use a physics-based one. Let's start with the physics-based one. So we also need to add a rigid body. Alright. So under the player, let's add a player controller physics 3D. Now there's 2D versions of these as well, which only run in either X and Z or X and Y axis, depending on whether your game is side-scrolling or top-down. Anyway, player controller 3D, since we have a 3D scene here. So we have some options. We can set the walk speed, which we'll set to 5. The run speed we'll set to 10. Turn speed 1. Jump control. We can set some animations. We can also set a stop distance here. We don't need to mess with those right now. So now that we have this player controller, we need some inputs to it. And the way to add inputs to it is through the access input. Access input. For that, we want to set an access name. And let's start with walk. So we'll have the access be vertical. And then we'll set on walk. Now let's take a look at the camera here. Let's move the camera so that it's actually pointing at the player. Let's move it back a little bit. We're not going to make the camera move just yet. So now we have this access input, which is set on the vertical axis, which will make the player walk. One last thing we're going to need, since we're using the physics-based one, is a capsule collider. So we're just going to add that so that we don't fall through the ground. The other thing we're going to need to do here on our rigid body is to add some constraints to freeze rotation. And then let's just bump up the speed here to 10 and 20 and add the acceleration to be 30 so that we accelerate really fast. And then if we give that a try, we go back and forth. Can't go left and right yet. Let's make it so we can turn. So we'll add another input access input action, set it to be horizontal, and then change that to on turn. So now we should be able to, it's not going to be obvious which way we're pointing. We can move forwards, backwards, we can turn a little bit, and then move forwards, backwards, turn a little bit more, move forwards, backwards. So let's just add a cube and make it small, and let's put it in front of the player here so that we can tell which way they're facing. Try that again. So now if we turn, we can turn back, move forwards, move backwards. There we go. Now let's say we wanted to also run. So that's another input access, or access input action. And for this one, let's set that to fire 3. And then we'll set that to on run. Just check our run speed is double our walk speed. Actually spell this right. And give this a try. So it's turn, walk, run. See how that's faster, slower, faster. The next thing we can do is to make the player jump. In order to do that, we need to add a jump controller. So if we add a jumping controller here, we're going to set, yeah, that's that. Jump force, let's set that to 15. And we could add some sounds and animation. You can also set a maximum number of jumps allowed. And then we're going to need to add another access input. And we're going to set that to jump. Now these inputs, by the way, I'm not just making them up. If you go into Edit, Project Settings, Input, you can see them all listed here and what keys or buttons or whatever that they're based on. So back over here, we're going to set this to on jump. So we can turn a little bit backwards, forwards, jump. That's a little bit of a high jump there. We can turn that down a little bit. So on our jump controller, jump force, we'll set that to be like 8. Give that a try. So turn, forwards, backwards, jump, jump, jump backwards. We can also move while jumping. Now throughout all of this, we've just had the camera stationary. So let's make that camera move. The first thing we want to add is a cat camera component, which is basically a state machine but has some extra properties. And then under here, we can add a third-person camera controller. And we can take a look over here. There's a bunch of different options. We set the target, which is the target for the camera. Initial camera targets we want to set to the player. And then we can set a minimum maximum distance and viewing angle and all that. And if we just give that a try, just as basically the default, if we move around here, the camera is just going to follow us. Notice it's not rotating with the player. So first thing we want to do is to have it pan with targets. So then we can give that a try, see what that does. It should make it so that whenever the player moves or turns, the camera turns. You'll notice that the camera will also not, it generally doesn't go into walls. It goes in closer instead of going inside the wall. That's all automatic. Alright. We can actually turn that off if we turn off raycast objects. So now, if I were to go inside of this thing, keep going. See, I'm actually just inside the cube instead of trying to get outside of it. So the next thing we might want to pan or tilt our camera, right? So let's do that. So under here, let's add a mouse button. trigger, and under the mouse button, that's weird. I guess we need to add a triggered action. So add a triggered action, put the mouse button trigger underneath that. Not sure why that didn't happen automatically. And then over here, underneath the triggered action, we want to add a access input. And we could say mouse X on camera pan. So we should be able to pan with the mouse. Right, and now it'll stay locked at that angle. We could turn it a little bit more. The other thing we might want to look at here is on this third-person camera, there's some smoothing. So we can set that really high, and what will happen is that the camera's motion will be smoother. You can see how it's kind of just floating along. And if we even if we rotate here, it's going to smooth that. The player can kind of get a little further away from it in this case. And then if we set the smoothing all the way down, you'll see it'll be very rigid. It just immediately pops into place. It's always exactly where it should be. Alright, so let's add another input axis so that we can do mouse Y, and we can do on camera tilt. So that way we can do this. When we hold down the mouse button, we can look around in all the different directions. Now the next thing we might want to do is add a zoom. So make a copy of this, but we're going to take it out of the triggered action. So we want to call this mouse scroll wheel and set this down to on camera zoom. Now if you remember, there's some options here. Zoom level half, minimum is 1, maximum is 10. We can also set the min-max tilt. So if we use the mouse wheel, we can zoom in all the way there, and we can zoom out all the way to here, and we can move around with the left mouse, and then we can walk around. We can fall off. Alright. That's about it for doing a third-person camera and the physics-based player controller 3D. Let's try the not physics-based ones to show you the difference. It's really a little bit hard to tell, but so first thing we need to do is add a player or character controller. Yep, character controller. We can remove our capsule collider here because that comes with its own. You could set these options if you want them anything other than the default. And then under the player, we're going to add the player controller 3D without physics. We can come over here, set the walk speed to 5, run speed to 10, turn speed to 2. Everything else is normal. So now we can move fast. It's a little bit slower actually. Turning is a little faster because I turned that up. I can still jump. This one tends to be more predictable, whereas the other one, since it's based off of the physics, you can have weird things happen. Here we can run around, teleport, jump off this. That's all it takes to switch between those two. We can also, let's add a state under here. So we'll add a third person state, and let's just take all that, put that under there, and then we'll add a first person And we'll get rid of this, and we'll add first person camera. That's weird that that didn't, it lost our triggered action. Alright, well, I'll put that under there. So, when you're doing a first person camera, we probably want to add some states to the player as well. So we'll do right. So third person is all of this. First person, whoops. Oh, we don't need the cube in there. We want to put all that under there. We want to remove the camera pan over here, and we actually also don't need the tilt. Oh yeah, we do need the tilt. Why is that? Oops, that's incorrect. I'm not sure why these are getting messed up. Okay, did we add a first? We did add a first person camera. Go under there. Pan speed, tilt speed, sure, zoom speed, blah 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 blah. Initial player, yep. We can also set a bob amount here. Now we just need a way to switch between them. Let's use the right mouse button. So we'll add another trigger for mouse button here. We'll set the button to be 1, direction down, and then we'll add a change state to 2 things, right? Actually, let's not do that. Let's add a change state to first person, and also set the main camera to start in third person. And then we'll make a new change state in here. So we're going to change the player also to first person, and then copy that over there, change the player to third person. Oops, player. That way they'll be synced up. And is there really any difference here? Oh, there is one thing we're going to want to do here. Instead of having the turn be just on the horizontal, we might want to do that on the mouse instead. So we're going to add a mouse button, and then we'll do this. Oops, that's the wrong space. We'll do that under here. And instead of this, we'll do mouse X on turn. And let's just, we need to set the player into a state. So we're going to set the player into third person. Oops, and I think I called this first person instead of first person that way. Okay, so one thing we're going to want to do is on the player. Since we're not doing this physics space, we're going to want to remove the rigid body component. And then the other thing we're going to want to do is take this triggered action here, copy that, paste it into first person, and set that back to third so that we can click the mouse to go switch between them. So just so we can stop it from flickering back and forth between the two, let's add a delayed action over here to our change state trigger. Let's give it a try. So we're in third person mode. We can walk around and jump. We can switch to first person mode, walk around, jump. One thing we can't do yet in first person mode is strafe, so we'll fix that in a minute. So let's go back over here. And we'll take this horizontal action, put that over there, and instead of on turn, we'll set that to on strafe. And we'll give this a try. So third person mode, zoom in, zoom out. First person mode, we could strafe left and right, forwards and back, jump. Switch back to third person mode. And switch to first person mode. You can just go back and forth. Now that's the little nose that we put on this guy. I think that about wraps it up for player controllers and camera controllers. In this video, you should have learned how to set up a player controller on the player for either first or third person. Set up a camera controller also for first or third person, and for the player controller have it either be physics based or just a regular character controller based. And then you should have learned how to add access input actions to that in order to control both the camera and the player with input buttons. I hope you found this video informative and useful. Let us know in the comments if there are other videos or tutorials you'd like to see. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on social media for the latest videos and other news. For more information on CAT and how it can help you build and prototype games faster, please visit catgamebuilder.com. I'm Mike Handverger with Tricky Fast Studios. Thanks for watching.